Works Committee meeting actually scheduled for 6 p.m. Finance Committee meeting went long, and therefore we're starting late at 6:44 p.m. For members of the audience that are here, we will introduce ourselves, members of the committee. I'm Thad Kubishak. I'm committee chairperson.
Lee Graff, chairperson.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Scott Keller, alderperson.
Jim Geniac, citizen.
Joe Eichstead, City Engineer.
Todd Weiler, Water and Light.
Tom Realm, Alderman, committee person.
And any other alderperson that's here. Shane Blaze. We will go to item number 2, review Department of Public Works report, Directories report.
The report was included in your packet. Again, this month we had a lot of work that took place. A couple highlights. We did have the groundbreaking, and work is now underway at the aquatic facility. Our East Grand project, stage 2, is just about underway from Lincoln to 8th Street. Concrete paving is scheduled to begin on June 10th for 2nd Street to Lincoln. We've got kind of an exciting announcement. Ryan Giefer, our wastewater superintendent, was awarded the 2019 Operations Award by the Central States Water Environment Association. Essentially named as Wisconsin's Operator of the Year in recognition of his outstanding process improvements made over the last year, and that is really a group effort by the whole team at the wastewater plant. We also have 4 retirements that are either very recent or coming up. Kevin Anderson, John Cushell, Dan Marzeski, and Rich Hines are all retiring from Public Works and Engineering Department. The rest of the report will be found online, so anyone can take a look at it at their leisure.
Any further discussion on that by the committee? With that said, we will go to item number 3, review and consider amending recently adopted changes to Ordinance Chapter 7, solid waste collection, to reinstate garbage services for mobile home parks and residential units located within commercial buildings. And the reason why this is on the agenda, we had this on the agenda last month. It failed to receive a motion and a second to move forward. Interestingly enough, there's kind of the reason why I wanted it on there is because I'm being blamed for having this ordinance in the first place, for taking garbage collection away. And I don't know why I'm being blamed, but I'm going to ultimately send this, make a motion to send this back to council, and the council meeting will be in 2 weeks. It'll be Tuesday night in 2 weeks at 6 p.m. What I want to do is allow a little bit of input, but I want it to be orderly. And if there's a case where there is anybody opposed to this that are in this audience, let me know right away, because I'll let you speak first. But otherwise, I'm going to assume that everybody is here in support of the actual language in this in terms of reinstating garbage to both mobile home parks as well as residential units. So if that's the case, then I guess a show of hands, I will ask you, in support. But again, you do not need to sway me. I'm going to make that motion for this to go to the city council floor. But is there anybody here from the audience that is opposed to reinstating garbage to mobile home parks and or other residential units?
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Does that include recycling?
And it includes recycling, exactly. Anybody opposed? So therefore, what I'll do is a show of hands, and I really appreciate everybody coming down. This is interesting because a lot of times we don't have citizen participation, but this is important. This shows that you guys are interested in local government, interested in the issues, and this also shows that we can have unintended consequences by passing a certain ordinance. And we also, as a city council, have the ability to make the necessary changes to those unintended, to the ordinances that offer unintended consequences. So, with that said, I'm going to put a motion on the floor to consider and reinstating garbage and recycling services for residential units located within mobile home parks and commercial buildings.
There's two different items, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think there is. It's about two different items, though. The first item is the mobile home, and the second item is residential.
Yes, to an extent, but what I'm ultimately doing is with the ordinance, I'm actually just crossing out the language that was added, so that's how I'm actually addressing it. So it would be...
I've got a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Paul, so we would, for the mobile home parks, make an agreement for any damage done within their roadways? Is that something that we need to worry about with trucks in it? I know that was a discussion at one time.
Yeah, at one time we were discussing making an agreement with the property owners.
Is that a concern, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the direction why we chose not to include the trailer parks initially, was because we wanted the curbside and the trailer parks for the most part. We have, 5 trailer parks, and they all have their own interior streets.
It's all curbside. It's all curbside. no
There's
matter
other mobile
what.
home parks, though.
I know, that's where we're from. But it's still curbside. We
Or
won't
other
even talk
parks,
about
so,
that.
But
It's private road.
it's all private road, it's not
Some
city
of it is
streets.
private roads.
And then I guess my other question is regarding the residential units located within or above commercial property. My question is, how is commercial properties garbage being collected? If we're doing residential, how is the commercial being collected?
I have commercial, and we have to, I'm Ron Martin, and we have to do our own commercial, not the residential, but the commercial. We have our own dumpster, not for cardboard as well, you know.
But what about the actual garbage?
The garbage, we have everything taken away. And but the residential, which are above my business, when I think at that time I must have spent $500,000 building that building. And they told me I could have residential in the commercial building and everything, and that they would treat them as regular residents and everything. It isn't like they have to go up there and pick up the garbage. I've got a guy that comes in at 6:30 every morning, and he'll wheel their garbage out to the curb and everything. They used to pick it all up. They even had a dumpster, the small dumpsters for their recyclables. Well, they come and pick that up too now. I don't mean it full of garbage. I mean, they just picked up.
My concern is making sure that commercial is not being put into the residential to circumvent, because then if the city's picking up that commercial garbage, then every other business or small business would have an argument that they need their commercial picked up too. And that's my only concern. Otherwise, I'm not opposed to it. I just think that it needs to be equitable across the board to other commercial businesses. And I don't know how we police that, and that's probably something you would end up doing for the commercial, if they somehow saw you didn't have a garbage receptacle that another service that they're not picking it up, then it'd probably raise the question that there's commercial garbage in that residential garbage. But I just want to make sure it's equitable. But I'm not opposed to it.
Is there anybody, as far as on the committee, or potentially any other alderpersons that have any questions or concerns with reinstating garbage for mobile home parks and residential units above businesses?
I'm gonna stick with what we've done and be opposed to it.
Okay, so I got a motion on the floor, and therefore I'm entertaining any seconds.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? And this is where I will ask, everybody that's here is in favor. You're not opposed to the proposed language of reinstating garbage. Just give me a hand in the air saying that you're in support of it. Wonderful. Like I said, what I wanted to do is make sure that this was orderly. I wanted everybody's citizen input, and therefore no further discussion on this.
Yeah, I've got a question as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of residents, like on Pepper there, every other house is a resident, and then there's commercial. And so if the residents there, are they gonna be picking up their garbage and then the commercial right between them, and they jump between them? Okay, I understand that now. If you have a two-story house and you live in the bottom, you're the resident now. And if they rent out their top, then it's considered commercial because they're collecting income from it. Is that correct?
No, that
No, that's
anything
not-
less than a fourplex would be considered.
Yeah, but that's not what well, I didn't get a copy of the last thing. First I got was the one in January, and then it's like the fourplex thing and all that.
Sure. Yeah, if it's a duplex or if you're renting out the top, that's not considered commercial. That's still considered residential.
Even if it's in commercial zone property.
Well, for example, like your property, then I guess, state that question again, I guess.
Okay, forget my property.
Yeah.
Not later. If I lived on St. Pepper and I had a two-story house there, and that whole block is zoned commercial already, I understand you can have residential in commercial, but not commercial in residential. But, so obviously the whole block is zoned commercial already. So I own the home, for instance, and I live right there in the home on the bottom floor, and I have an apartment above it. Now, isn't that apartment being rented out? Isn't that now?
That's a really good question. That's one thing that we
I'm being
haven't.
the landlord, living in the bottom, but I'm renting out top. Now, that's, you're collecting income from it, I think, and that's commercial. I know, I live out in Clark County, and we had, out there, it's all farmers we were, and they said, well, we won't pick up commercial either. The farmers are all businesses. So then they did go along, okay, yeah, that's true, so then they picked up there as well. There was more, actually, the farmers are commercial. And so they did pick them up, and the people, like I said, online, they live up there. The post office is the one who assigned them that number, the U.S. Post Office, and that's where their residence is. That's where they vote from. If you come down to vote, you gotta show them where your residence is. I don't think there's something wrong here. I pay higher taxes already, and it's supposed to be for my roads, fire protection, police protection, and garbage pickup.
Well, like we talked on the phone though, commercial, industrial, and residential are all taxed at the same rate. There are different valuations for property, and you're being.
Yeah, I guess I'm missing, yeah.
Yeah, you're being taxed for the valuation of what a like size or the square footage of a commercial entity, and depending upon the side of town and different things like that. But to go back to address your original question, I don't know how many properties are zoned commercial where it's actually just a house, where there could be an apartment on the lower floor or the upper floor.
Sure.
So therefore, and technically, if it was zoned commercial and it was changed back to residential, even though it would be like a duplex or a half story above, it would be in a conditional use type of an operation, so we would have to look at conditional use. But I think that's it's not the norm, where that would be an exception to the rule as far as what zoning goes. So with that said, that is something that could potentially be addressed at another meeting. But I think as far as what the agenda item is and what we're talking about, it's the reinstatement and basically what it is taking out the language, and this is ultimately what we're doing is taking out the language, section 7.05, condominiums, mobile home parks, residences of all businesses, and it strikes out the language, the city will not provide collectible recycling service or garbage service to residential properties physically located above commercial properties and to mobile home parks or to condominiums. So we're removing that language completely. So that's where the ordinance change actually comes into play. So, yes.
I may be speaking out of turn or what have you. I know what you're doing and I applaud you, but it doesn't go far enough. these people probably don't know that anything that doesn't fit in that trash can, the city won't pick up henceforth on, to include that they would have to come down to City Hall, buy 3 stickers for $10, go back to their home. That's the way it was explained
It's
before.
not that way anymore.
Oh, it's not that way anymore?
No.
How about the trash where the lamps or carpeting or a nightstand or a table
You can
is
fit
put
it in your
out?
bin, they'll take it away.
No, it doesn't fit in the
You
bin.
break it up and fit it in your bin, they'll take it away.
35 years, it's been going on. We paid the taxes, and it's been picked up. You have the recycle every other weekend. Why not every other weekend have the trash? It's as simple as
They
that.
don't have trucks that can load those things up anymore. That's part of the issue.
Whose fault is that?
Maybe, you know, that's the way things are going now, those side pickup. But yeah, the truck
These
doesn't.
people don't have trailers or trucks to haul trash to
That's very
the dump
consistent,
and
Jim.
pay the tipping fees.
Most communities don't pick that stuff up. I mean,
Thank you for bringing that up, Jim. I appreciate it. That isn't really part of what we have on the agenda as far as the overall garbage pickup. And I know that you had brought that concern up when we were going through this process with the garbage. And I'll absolutely log or notate your concern about the size of containers and that. But to keep with the order of the agenda, I want to try and keep going forward, much like we were delayed because the Finance Committee agenda, we got to kind of stick to a timeline here. So,
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
When you talked about picking up garbage, reinstating this, also recyclable too, correct?
recyclable as well.
We would like our bins back
That's what would happen.
when they picked them all up and took them away.
Absolutely.
But, we were talking out there with the mayor. I have been out in Maples since '74. We were annexed to the city, I want to say it's very early '90s or late '80s. When they annexed us to the city, we used to be Grand Rapids. Yet we had garbage pickup and we had recycling pickup. And before you issued these new bins, we had the small blue ones. I don't understand why all of a sudden it was decided to cut it out. We've got people out there that cannot get out of their mobile homes. I mean, they literally, on the back street from me, the mail, we have now got lock boxes and they're all up at the front of the court. But we have got people out there that the mailman is actually hand delivering to their homes because they can't even get out. And all of a sudden, our recycling bins were taken away after they were emptied and our garbage wasn't picked up. And there we were, in a mess. And these people, I sat out there for days and days because these people couldn't get out of their houses to do anything with it.
They're physically not able to.
Physically, they couldn't, they're
What they did now
basically bound.
at Maples, what they did now is if you're unable to pick up your garbage and you are handicapped or you are incapacitated and cannot lift that lid and hoist that trash, then they will, one day a week, come around with a truck and a truck and a trailer and pick up your garbage. And they've decided Tuesdays, which was our normal garbage day, to do this.
Is it for sure?
Yes. You have to get on the list.
You have to have a doctor's.
You
have to have a doctor's
have
slip
to
and be
have.
I go around with a
Okay,
contractor.
we'll talk about that at Maples when she has her meeting coming up soon. But there is going to be a list, and so they're trying to remedy that there.
Well,
for
we are
those that
all here
can't.
trying to get our
But-
service back.
Right, we still want to try to, we agree with.
I'm
what
on a
you're
city
doing.
street. I've been on the corner of Lincoln and Ruby. I'm on a city street. I'm plowed by the city on the street and the whole bit. I guess what I'm wondering right now is, I would like to ask him why he's opposed to it.
What I don't want to do is.
I don't want to get into the discussion. If you are going to table this and you're going to try to get it reinstated,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Although, what I want to do is make the statement that, I'm not going to prohibit anybody from talking, but because this is not a public hearing,
Right,
I'm not going to compel a committee member
Okay.
to speak that way.
and I'm fine with that.
I just wanted, the largest dictionary in the world, I believe, at this time is Wikipedia. And it is a source of much knowledge. Would you agree? By Wikipedia definition, commercial property refers to real estate property that is used for business activities. Malls, restaurants, gas stations, storage rental properties, hotels, motels, small business owners, apartments, and rental buildings. We are a community of 33 homes. We all own our own homes. None of us run the business. We each pay individual taxes, which have been reworded into fees. However, the tax assessor comes by each year and assesses each of our homes. It is the tax assessor that is hired, contracted by the city of Wisconsin Rapids, and our owner pays that portion of our rent to the tax revenue department here. So call it what you want, but it's a tax. We pay our taxes. You voted to deem us a commercial property when by definition we are a residential community, and the definition of a residential community is a community, usually a small town or city, that is composed of residents, as opposed to commercial property and industrial facilities. In our community, we have many veterans from World War II and Vietnam. In our prime, we were business owners, nurses, mill workers, laborers, merchants. We built this city. In what circumstance can you possibly consider us commercial property when by definition, dictionary definition, we are the exact opposite. We are a community. And I'd like you to really think about that. The definition of commercial is absolutely not what a mobile home park is at all.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Carey?
Just a couple comments. Apartments that are part of commercial properties and mobile home parks are defined by the assessor's office as a commercial use. Many municipalities like Wisconsin Rapids, including Marshfield, Stevens Point, Oshkosh, LaCoche, so on and so forth, all have services consistent with the city's current ordinance that requires these types of properties to contract for garbage and recycling services. Condominium complexes, mobile home parks, and most commercial businesses in Wisconsin Rapids have varying service needs, and oftentimes it's incompatible with a one-size-fits-all cart collection service. Where sometimes it's much more efficient to have a dumpster. Sometimes the carts work fine, sometimes there's not enough room for them, sometimes there's not reasonable access to the public street. One of the goals of this change to an automated service is to reduce costs associated with garbage collection and reallocate the labor costs to streets maintenance activities. These proposed changes to restore these services significantly negates those goals. The current ordinance has resulted in months of staff time and financial resources developing the collection routes, informing the public about the program, purchasing the trucks, purchasing the carts. We've developed a 4-day route schedule that will allow for garbage and recycling operators to assist in other high priority maintenance activities on the 5th day of the week. Adding stops to the routes will result in additional costs, administrative efforts, public confusion, and less ability to perform other critical maintenance activities.
Mr. Booth, can you tell us how much time it takes per year?
As proposed, 554 additional stops are needed requiring routes to return to a 5-day-a-week collection schedule. Regenerating the route maps to balance the routes requires a significant amount of time, and especially since the city doesn't currently have a GIS coordinator on staff. Staff's going to be required to deliver about 1,308 garbage and recycling carts the way this is proposed. About 550 garbage carts. I sent a memo out earlier today. The recycling carts, we do have enough of those left in inventory. We won't have to purchase those, but about $30,000 worth of additional cost to purchase the carts, and the annual tipping fees is estimated to be about $30,000 annually, to be reallocated likely from what was anticipated to be a street maintenance activity. Additionally, there's about an 8% increase in truck operating costs. The commercial properties with residential dwellings in place already have to provide refuse and recycling services for those commercials. If approved, there is a redundant service there, and there is a potential to encourage theft of service, where the commercial business wouldn't necessarily pay for recycling and garbage and just partner in with their residential property. As staff, we've reviewed this as staff, and we recommend maintaining the ordinance as written at least until July 2020, so that the work that's taken place since, June or July of 2018 to now can move forward. If we implement any major scope changes at this point, we really have to go back. We won't be able to kick the program off in July. We're already delayed because of not having a GIS coordinator and trying to get the routes done right. But I'd like to see the program start. Again, this committee and council's worked on it for just about a year. What we currently have as an ordinance isn't any different than any other municipality. And if we could provide garbage to, garbage service specialized for everybody's situation, that'd be wonderful. But priorities as they are, and challenges and deficiencies in our ability to fund our street maintenance projects and things like that. We do have to look at streamlining our activities and provide the best overall value to the community that we can. So I certainly would like to be able to provide a high level of service to everyone. But those that are excluded in the current ordinance are done. It's done so because the level of service for each of those locations is unique and generally challenging to provide, at the same value and low cost as what it is for other parcels that are unlike that. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Why were we considered?
Please, what I don't want to do is silence anybody. Everybody came down here. You guys waited almost an hour for this meeting. But what I want to do is continue with this. We've got a motion on the floor, a second, to reinstate this. What'll happen if it passes, for when I call roll call vote, it'll get sent to the city council meeting, the full council meeting in 2 weeks. The Tuesday of that week, 2 weeks from tonight, 14 days from tonight, at 6 p.m. But I'm going to ask for one more call if there is any other information that either isn't in agreement with what is said, or any facts or anything that will dispute anything said. So long story short, what I'm saying is that I think we got all the information, the reasonable information, and I'd love to have everybody have the opportunity to talk. But again, I want to emphasize that by showing up, you guys are talking. You guys have made a statement with that. And again, I think we have, as far as the committee and as far as a public meeting is concerned, I think that we have exhausted the fact of where we're going. And if there was a motion and a second made on this, then that means that it's before the vote is called, it is probably favorable that it is going to the city council.
If it's going to the council meeting in 2 weeks, is that an open meeting?
Yes,
or,
yes. It is,
so the
yes.
Public can turn around and return and be there.
I can't say come to the meeting, but I'm saying come to the meeting. So, it's one of those. So yeah, it can't be a closed meeting. It'll be in the council chambers there, and just by showing up, that's Civics 101 for me as far as I'm concerned. And again, 6 PM, I don't know what
The
day of the
18th.
month, the 18th, in the council chambers. So, again, is there, I'm sorry.
No, I'll just say, and I didn't avoid the question. I guess the simple answer was, and I didn't know if that would suffice or not. Simple answer is that I've listened, I've gone through this for a year. I'm satisfied with the decision that the committee made, and I haven't changed my mind, and so that's, and I think some facts and figures that Joel gave over there, that's reasons that we made the decision.
But then, yeah, I understand
That's why I'm sticking with the decision.
Okay, but I could also say, you issued us all these recycling bins and everything else. It took them in a heartbeat to pick them up and take them away. We've had garbage service and recycling service for, I can't tell you, all the years that I've been out there. And all of a sudden, you want to take it away, and we're not considered taxpayers or citizens or whatever. That doesn't make any sense to me.
What does my tax dollars go for if it's supposed to be going for garbage pickup? I don't, I see different parts of that being built. My garbage dollars don't.
Exactly. I mean, that isn't, there isn't a yes or no or an easy answer for that, where the tax dollars go. But, I mean, so that's why I put this back on the agenda and moving it back onto the city council agenda. With that said, I'm going to call for a vote. Those in favor of reinstating, those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. It will get sent to the council agenda in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for coming. You do not have to sit in here for the rest of the meeting. You can leave now. But please, can I ask you, if you are going to talk, to kind of go into the rules? Because, yeah, thank you guys for being here.
We will not disturb you.
Thank you.
Our handicapped people have to be in bed right now. If you're recognized by
Well, I don't know what Mr. Tom Rails in before we could all get together and vote them out.
Next, that's right.
I talk to you.
Next election that comes up.
All right, we will be, item number 3
And Mary for
is complete. Item number 4, review residential street lighting LED bulb installations. And this was a referral from Alderperson Cadnaugh, and I seen him in the hallway earlier, but he had mentioned to me that he is out there. Oh, good. And so in a moment or two, when he comes in, I'll have him address it. Mr. Cadnaugh, will you sit at the table quick? We're going to be talking about the LED bulbs. So again, we're going to look at item number 4, review residential street lighting LED bulb installations, and that was a referral by Alderperson Cadnaugh. Yep. And we have a representative of the Waterworks and Lighting Commission here.
I think you might have talked before, earlier last spring, I believe. They had the fellow who went over and you guys pulled the ball out for him. So I guess the concern from him is, and I've actually gotten calls from a couple other residents, is just how bright the lights are when the old ones go out and you replace them. And with shining in their windows, and a lot of people have complained about this causing lack of sleep, taking away from their ability to enjoy their property at night if they want to sit out on their deck. And so that's why I put this on as a referral to the committee. It's just hoping that there can be discussion around, is there a solution to this? What are some of the things we can do? What does all that entail?
Sure. So that's the reason I came tonight, to kind of inform everybody about the LED lighting. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I'm here to ask or answer any questions anybody has. Just to give you guys a little bit brief history on this. So there are 3,142 lights in the city that Water and Light maintains and tries to upgrade. 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, when I started with the utility, it was actually the city's accountant that approached us and said, can we start using LED fixtures? So now realize 10 years ago, the technology that was available then has changed drastically to what's available now. So The studies and the products made 10 years ago focused on safety, because that's really what your light is supposed to have. When it comes to the safety, they look at what they call a warm versus a cold temperature of the light. This is where you might have heard this term where they talk about 2700K or 3000K or 4000K. Well, on the high end of the number are these whites and blues. On the low end of the number is the lights that are more your yellows and your oranges. The yellows and the oranges are more appealing for landscaping and the like. The whites and the blues are much more appealing for people that have car dealerships or parking lots, because it gives the true light of what it's lighting. But the studies that have come out shows that at the 4000K mark, that's where the optimal safety number is, because when the human eye senses motion, that's where it picks up the best motion. So on the studies that are out there, some motion, a person walking a dog will see that person 140 feet away with the 4000K light, and they'll only see that motion when they're 80 feet away from it with the warmer lights. So with that all being said though, when Joe Terry actually approached me last July with a resident on 19th Street that was unhappy because we, when a light, fails, we just replace it now with a new one. They don't make the old style anymore. The light that we were replacing it with, which was a 140 watt light, and it was at that 4000K mark. And the reason again was for the safety. So this individual was not happy. He had a home that was located a couple houses down from the light, and he liked his privacy and he liked his landscaping, and he felt that the light drowned all of that out. So when Joel approached me, we try to make our customers happy. We're not just going to say this is all you can have, but realize that you just can't go down to Home Depot and buy a different light. We have a standard that we try to hold, and we want a product that when we put it up is going to last the 12 years it's supposed to last. So when Joe approached me with this, I started doing some research, started calling other utilities, asked them what they were using, and we actually found a product that we liked. It's made in Milwaukee, so it's not only a United States product, it's a Wisconsin product. Once you pick that product, now you order one to try it. And so 8-week delivery goes by. While this is all happening, this resident's angrier and angrier. So we actually went back and put an older style light in that location just so that that resident would be happy. Now, when we did that, I got 3 other phone calls from other neighbors on the block that liked the brighter light because they felt it gave them better lighting for their garages, and they were less worried about somebody maybe breaking in, and they could, see better. And so, that kind of is a telling tale of like and they were unhappy because they said, how come one person can dictate having the light go back to the older style when we wanted the newer, brighter light? So meanwhile, that's what's going on is, I'm finding this light. Then when we get the light, we put it up and we try it out. If we like it, which we did, then we have to go to the Public Service Commission in Madison, and we actually have to get approval to use the light, and then they are actually the ones that tell us what is the rate that we charge the city for the light. So long story short, we now have a light that is a 90 watt light. It has a feature in it that it can be adjusted, and it's at the 2700 K wavelength, so it is a warmer light as well. But if the idea is, okay, let's go back and let's replace the 1,000 LED lights with something else, I think that's a bad decision, because I think we got to also look at safety and people, walking, and that has to be taken into account as well. But it does make a lot of sense for some of these residential streets that have very low traffic. The studies show that the lights of your vehicle are enough to meet a lot of the safety requirements. So it's very possible that there are more lights in the city that are even really needed on these residential roads at 25 miles per hour. And that's the city that tells the water and light, should we remove those lights completely? So So that's your decision. It's the engineering department that does that. We just do then what we're told to do. But going forward now, we do have a new product. We are going to be using that more in these lower traffic residential areas. And, you know, that's, I guess, what I have to say about it. And like I said, I'm here to answer more questions if people have it.
Do you still intend, though, to use the 4,000 K on the arterials and
So,
connecting
yeah,
highways and
state highways, you know, the expressway being part of it. West Grand is another example. Now East Grand. You know, we have a set standard. I have the lighting standard, a copy here. Anybody can have it. It's just a copy. But it lists all the LED lights that have been approved and where they're used in the city. The reason that I wrote this standard 10 years ago is because we didn't have one when I started here, and what was happening is we had 80 different lights in our storeroom because anybody was just buying what they felt like and throwing it up. And so you got to have some kind of standard that you're going to stick to if you're going to have a quality maintenance program. So, okay. So, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, no, I just comment. I'm glad to hear that you got the new product and that it works. So if a resident, let's just say I were to get another call from one of the 1,000 bulbs that's around town, then
Yeah.
like, 'cause I know the specific resident you're referencing in that situation, but I've gotten calls from other ones too. If that were the case, would we be able to reach out to you and have it adjusted, or?
Yeah, I guess what I would ask, which I think makes sense to me, is could we have some kind of a petition where if a person doesn't like the light in their neighborhood, they could get their residents in the neighborhood to sign it and say, yeah, we're all in agreement, let's have a light here that's less bright. Because I didn't like the fact that last year we had one resident complain, so we changed it out, and then I had other residents call later and they were upset that it got changed out. So if we could get a consensus in an area that everybody says, hey, I don't like this light, I think the first step would be for the engineering department to say maybe we don't even need a light there. But if they say no, we still need a light, then absolutely we'd go back and, you know, change it out if it seems like the majority of the people are in agreement with it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And the reason I asked for this to be put on the committee meeting is because it was something that I've been called on several times, and I've heard it a topic of conversation in the public as well. So I figured rather than just the one-off of explain the policy to everyone, if anyone wanted to come and speak on it, which it sounded like there was a lot of people who did. Sure. I don't know if anyone over here tonight, but I thought it'd be good to have it in a public hearing.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good idea.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions, concerns about the LED replacement program with streetlights?
Quick question. Did you say anything about shades? I know the old style and
Yeah, and so the mayor makes a good point. There's also the glare factor of a light shining in people's windows.
That's what I
We can actually change the angle of the light on the arm, which can help in some cases. We also can have what's called a blocking shield that goes on the back of the light. So if the light is on the street and it's the backlight portion is shining into a house, we can add that to the light as well. So again, if we get a call, we will take we'll take a look at it and we'll try to come up with something that tries to make the resident happy. Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you for coming down tonight and explaining it. And I think that's one thing that Mr. Cadnaugh touched on was just the advocacy of it. You know, sometimes we don't know, is it a case where there's 80 different bulbs? And it isn't. We've got a plan and an idea with that. And I also will take into consideration for a future agenda for creating a policy with maybe a petition or a percentage of residents that are located with that. And if you have any resources as far as calling other utilities that have an existing policy, it's always easier to borrow from somebody else's than recreate the wheel. So with that, this is not an action item, and we will go on to item number 5, review and consider storm sewer improvements on 21st Place. And if that would
Can you stay for this one too?
For me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I brought this up because most of the people here are sitting are concerned about it. That they had a large amount of water this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. That lasts probably the most in the last 16 years, you said. And so the question and concern is, what caused a large amount of water? And then then ultimately, and I think behind Stoibers, they have the pond that all the storm drains go to. And so does that create, through the leaching process, a greater amount of groundwater, which then continues to flow west? And if connecting the storm drain, and the reason why I'm here asking you to say is obviously there's the blow off of water from the water and light to keep the water circulating at the end of the line down there. And so would connecting that storm drain help alleviate some water issues, probably more for Stoibers, but I'd also spoke to people on pining behind 21st Place, and there was people that had water there. So there was a water flow coming from east to west, but did it pick up more because of things that the city did, which ultimately caused greater water this year? I don't know. So we want to get on an agenda so the residents could have had an opportunity to speak and ask questions and try to understand what's going on. And if making that connection would make sense, and maybe, I don't know about, the water thing has been going on for years at the end of the line there, and ultimately that would be nice to see that get looped and we wouldn't have any issues there. So I guess if the chairman would open up, if anybody would like anything to say.
First, I thank everybody for coming down, and I will give an opportunity. If it becomes redundant, then we want to keep with our meeting schedule. But Mr. Terry,
I was just going to say, just for definition purposes too, you said high water and water flowing. I think it's important to define what's meant by that.
Oh, for high water for me, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, is high water for the residents in the area is water in their basement when it's not normally in their basement.
So not stormwater, but groundwater.
Correct. Okay. But you have stormwater issues because you're taking all the surface water, running through storm system into a settling pond west of 21st Place. Right.
what I'll do is entertain anybody that has specific examples of your property, what's going on in 21st Place, because this is a referral by Alderperson Blazer, and I don't know too much about it. So is there anybody that would like to speak upon the stormwater issues that you are having?
Okay, so I'm on 21st Place, and I'm pretty much directly across the street from one of these ponds, and I have been pumping groundwater out since the end of March. And my pump runs every 30 seconds, and it runs for 40 seconds, and then when it rains, it actually gets longer, and the time that the pump is off is shorter. And now Stoibers live pretty much straight across on the other side of the pond, and they got the same thing, and they're actually even worse. And the last time I had that was back in the spring of 2011 when we had that flooding, when we got the 6 inches of rain in the fall, 2010. But it only lasted for about a month and a half, and it was done. And like I say, this has been going on since the end of March. And it's not ending. It just does not, it just stays. If I gain 10 seconds where it doesn't pump out and it rains, I lose 15 seconds. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So then with this, if storm sewer were to be included on 21st Place and tie into airport, or tie into airport?
That, I think that's the closest tie-in. I don't know if that's a solution, and Mr. Terry could probably speak more to it, because that's taking the surface and from the street and then flowing it into those ponds. So it's probably because water's going to flow, correct me if I'm wrong, east to west, so it's going to flow towards the river. And so once it's past your house behind you in the ponds, it should no longer be an issue. So you're still getting flow from the east.
From the east.
Versus what's being taken off the street and put into those ponds.
Yep.
So there's an issue, or just naturally higher groundwater. I don't know. Because I know people on Piney were vacuuming their basements with water too, and their pumps are running. So it's an issue coming further east than an isolated problem right there.
Because now they're building a house right next to me, and they went down 6 feet, and it was completely dry. And my basement's 8 feet. So there's an issue right in that spot.
For 8 years, you guys been pumping water every day into the pond. It pumps 3,000 gallons of water every day. That's 21,000 gallons a week that it pumps into that pond. And that's been pumping for 8 years. So we want to get looped in so we have fresh water instead of the water that we, and it's better, but it could be better. You guys, we were in here one other time, we wanted to get looped in down on Grove, and they decided to put this relief valve in. Sometimes it works, if it doesn't work, I call, because I can tell the water will start. We can tell with our water in our bathrooms that something's not right, so we call, they come and they restart it up again, and it's fine. But for that many years, we've been pumping all that water. It's got to be filling up that water down underneath everything. So that's what our issue is.
Interestingly enough, yeah, that's another question is, and we don't have it on the agenda, but it's definitely something that we can look at. And that was something that I had kind of a concern about as being a city council member in terms of understanding, or with my brief understanding of water utilities and the desire to have a loop in water systems. And if that's the case where both, we've got a storm water detention pond as well as a stormwater detention pond now having extra water added to it because of a dead-ended water main there. Do we just entertain the idea of putting the storm sewer in? Do we also entertain the idea of potentially compelling the Water and Light Commission to loop that water with, I guess one of the concerns is that ever going to be developed, so therefore are we ever going to have any added tax revenue for that or customers for that? And I guess, I don't know, the one thing too is that do we have any figures of what it would cost for either one of those projects and or both? And I guess the one thing that we don't know, the unknown would be if we did both of those projects, is that actually going to remedy the situations, especially with water basins? And I don't know. I mean, one could make an argument that it probably would help. But with that being said, is there, with what's on the agenda, specifically with stormwater, is there any estimated cost of what this project would be? Is there any estimated cost of what property owners would share in that? What is the city's policy as far as that?
So, but at this point, we haven't put any costs together because we didn't know what the problem was. The storm sewer that was designed for that subdivision is managing storm water. The pond isn't overflowing. It's working as it was designed to. If the issue is groundwater, that changes the scope considerably. Right now, the reason why those ponds were installed is because there's no gravity flow to get it anywhere else. If it's gonna go to the nearest storm sewer, we have to see, first of all, if the nearest storm sewer is big enough to take it, and it'd have to be pumped. So you're talking stormwater lift stations. I mean, those things are incredibly costly to maintain. Probably 3,000 feet of street and sewer that would have to be installed. And the problem is if our objective with storm sewer is to manage the storm water, if our objective is to manage the groundwater, then we have to look at design a whole lot different. And we've got to get that deeper yet to get that storm sewer, a perforated type storm sewer, beneath the water table so that it can drain into that and run away. So when you look at even the water utilities wells, when they're pumping 1,000 gallons a minute out of the well, and you look at what the cone of depression is in that area, you have to move an awful lot of water to make a difference. Again, without doing a design, I think it would be challenging to suggest that normal storm sewer system would make any improvement. But that's knee-jerk reaction. We haven't studied it at this point any further. That's just with the experience that I've had over the years. I've been at stormwater design, for just about 30 years now. So, it's understanding, what the problem is and if there's anything that can be done about it and at what cost. As far as installation of a storm sewer, I think the city's policy varies a bit on that. Once it's in, it's maintained by the utility. I think generally on new construction, the city covers the cost of that.
Correct. Yep.
But it would be, that would be a challenging one, to design and to operate, just because of the, it's got to go uphill and water doesn't do that.
With that being said, with that you mentioned that we've got potentially two different issues. One of them is storm water, and then the other one is groundwater. What would it take to do a study, or what would we need to do to look into it to identify whether it's stormwater or whether it's groundwater?
Well, hearing from the public here, it's groundwater. Even the groundwater that's being pumped into the stormwater pond, that pond is managing just fine. There's water in it. It perks away slowly. I think it's pretty evident that the problem's the groundwater. Is there anything we can do about it? And if there is, at what cost?
Can I just ask a question about that? So, again, I'm Jennifer Stover. I'm the one that has had my basement flooded twice, and we're talking about expense here, quite an expense to that. So my question is, we've owned this land for 18 years. We have built the house 11 years ago. We have never had this issue. In the past, in that basin that is behind our property, there was enough water to have spring peepers in there.
It's generally dry, right?
Generally dry. Mm-hmm. So what we're asking as a kind of a neighborhood is that what is going on that is causing that to be at the level that it is? One of the things that I think I spoke with you on the phone, is that we address is the city is now dumping the snow behind the hockey rink, in addition to what else is going on. We said there's a number of factors going on, and I guess what we're asking is that please address this and see what is happening. Something is causing this to change after that many years. Yes, I have some pumps going. We have through the years, never like this. We have 4 pumps going into sump pumps. We've been flooded twice now. The power going out for 15 minutes until I got the generator going, flooded my basement again. Why is that happening? Why is that level so high when it's never been high before?
Yeah, this year, at least in the area, I think most people have experienced groundwater elevations being about 1 to 3 feet higher than what they normally are. And if your house is close to that to start with, 1 to 3 feet makes all the difference. And it's all over.
Do you know why?
Well, just the precipitation. I think the month of March, we were 6 inches above normal, I think, precipitation. It's, spring runoff, it's
But why is
wet.
it not stopping? Why is it not, it slowed down a little bit, but now it's right back up there.
Yeah, and the groundwater elevation is kind of like it's a big bathtub. It slowly drains. The soil doesn't, and again, it depends on the soil conditions. Some soils are very hydraulically conductive. The water flows real fast through it, and some soils aren't.
Sand.
Yeah, but not everywhere, right? Wherever that water eventually is going to drain, it's draining because of gravity, and it may not always be going through sand. There may be some veins of clay, of other types of soil, rock, before it gets to the river. So, but again, this is just general. I can't speak for your subdivision. We haven't studied it specifically. But what I will say is that in a lot of places in town and around the area, I think you could go just about anywhere where there's sandy soils, and if you were to check elevations, they're normally right now about 2 feet above what maybe you'd see a year ago or
What's interesting enough, I was just looking at the topographical map. East to west is only a couple feet different. It actually flows south there. elevation-wise,
Yeah.
which is. I'm
But
just-
0%
I'm just
slope
making that
to get
comment.
water to flow, the pipe has to be absolutely
Right.
enormous. Yeah, it won't, you've got to have a pitch on the pipe, and it'd have to be lifted. At least, the few minutes that I looked at it, it would require a lift station of some sort. We don't have any stormwater lift stations here, and again, they're.
Why doesn't the other pond have water in it?
Yeah, there's two.
Yeah, again, I'm speculating. You guys live there, you probably, are they pumping as
I
much?
go over all the time.
Are they pumping as much
They don't
water out
pump
into
any
the
water
street?
in there.
So that's why the pond level's low. So that pond is, it's holding water. The sand around it is allowing it to perk slowly. But those houses might be built up 6-8 inches above or a foot or two above an actual elevation from what yours might be, and they might not be experiencing the groundwater that they have to pump. If there's some pumps
So
aren't
how long
running.
are those ponds supposed to be there? Just because if somebody bought those lots, I don't know where they would put their house, because those lots go into that pond. Now, the other guy that bought the lot down from us, he bulldozed that all down in there. So that's all flat through there now. There's no mounds in there or nothing anymore. So I was wondering how a person would ever build a house in there. If we got those ponds in there that close, how is he gonna build a house in there?
I think the ponds are all on the city's property.
No, they're not.
No?
No. Those were supposed to be tied in when that
Part of the subdivision?
highway went through a long time ago, never went.
And that's my issue, is we have a committee after committee, we talk about housing and location for single-family housing. Matter of fact, last meeting, I think it was brought up. And here's a subdivision that is primed for development and growth, and it is growing. And now, owners of those properties and the current owners are dealing with issues that I think need to be rectified, so we don't have issues with other people developing those areas and getting our growth out there, because that's what the community's continuously talking about in meetings about, is growth and subdivisions and single-family houses and nice neighborhoods, and this is a perfect place for that. And we're having issues, and most of these people sitting here are having issues. I think they need to be laid to rest once and for all, because obviously the water issue has been going on for many years. We have groundwater issue, which, stormwater, rain, if flowing south, snow piles, there's a lot of factors here that I think we need to get to the bottom of it, address it, and move on, and development can happen.
If I may interject, Mr. Chairman, I was the one that turned in the original referral to loop that water line. I did it twice. And we were always told by the city engineering department, that's before the staff we got now, and the water and light, that they could not loop it because the DNR said the water would not loop through there. It would stand if it went down Grove. It would stand in a pipe. It wouldn't flow through. So that's why this device was put in on at the last fire hydrant. That was Water and Light's decision to do that, not ours. And that was turning on at first. Is it battery operated, correct? It's battery operated. And at first it was pumping like 3,000 gallons every day in that pond. Never had any water in it. In fact, we thought we were going to raise ducks there, but nothing. It was always dry, except this year. The pond is full. And I've been here, 14 years, and never seen water in that pond like it is. But like Brian said, there's a little pond, but just adjacent to that is dry, just as one pond is full. But back to the original issue, I turned that referral in twice, and it got rejected both times. And the reason we wanted the water looped is in our toilets. You'd get this black ring and the water stunk. If you turned a faucet on, you thought it was coming out of a sewer. So that's why they hooked up that particular little device on the end to flow water through it. But I'm not sure why we haven't ever thought about doing it again. Well, I know the other issue was told about, when Highway 54 was going to get expanded, then they would put in the water loop and they would put in the sewer loop, storm sewer and all. But when is Highway 54 ever going to get built? Is it even on the agenda with the state?
I can't answer, and I don't know.
I can't, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not on the major list to rebuild. So until that happens,
So 50 years ago, water mains were installed in size to serve the property, the subdivision. Now they are sized to serve fire flow for fire protection. So that's why that main is 6 or 8 inches or whatever size it is. It's for fire flows, which means that that water sitting in that pipe, if you had a 2-inch or 4-inch service for that subdivision, it'd probably be plenty of water for everybody's use, and it's fresh, and so that's one of the challenges where there aren't a whole lot of options, and just looking at the subdivision, I would, again, knee-jerk reaction, but I would concur that if it were looped, it wouldn't do any good, because you need demand to make that water go, and now you've got a little bit of water coming down 21st Place. If it was looped to Grove, you'd have half of it coming down 21st Place and half of it coming down Grove. It'd make the problem worse. You wouldn't get that natural flow in there.
they were looking at hooking it up to 16th Street, going down Grove.
Right.
And I don't know why the water wouldn't flow through that area. Plus Grove is all sand, to dig a pipe in there. How costly could that be?
Yeah, but it's all about the demand in the system.
Yeah.
And if there's no demand in the system, the water there is stagnant. It could be flowing elsewhere. If there were demand further downstream, it might pull through, but there's
Well, we
not
can
much
tell,
else.
like Brad said, we can tell when the battery goes dead and that valve doesn't open.
Yep.
Because then you got that ring in the toilets.
all that manganese.
And don't drink the water.
And I think what Mr. Terry's talking about, to clarify demand, basically is how many faucets are operating and how many faucets in everybody's house is pulling water, because if no one turns it on, much like when the battery's dead, if the water isn't being sucked through that pipe, then you're going to have the stagnant water.
Well, until last year, there was only 5 houses. Now 3 got built last year, another one this year.
Going in.
And you would think that somebody's pulling more water, but apparently that doesn't make any difference.
And with that system down there, you're putting that water, you talk about there's water in one pond, but the one is dry. So now that water is being pulled, and it seems like it's going into the pond that's directly across from my house. So you're saying that it's designed to do what it's doing. Well, it's filling up and filling up. And it's funny that the house that's straight across from that pond, and then the other one that's on the other side of it, has got all the water problems. So where is that water going? If it's working correctly, it's probably going into the ground and going this way and that way. And we're getting all the water.
It's strange because I don't have any water in my basement, and the neighbor next to me, he doesn't have it, and the Grovers that built a new house, they don't have it.
I mean, I've seen situations where houses are built, and I saw one when I was working in another municipality, and the foundation was fine. It was basically the last bucket out of the corner in sandy soils, right? I mean, the water, and all of a sudden they had to raise the house 2 feet because they hit a spring, and I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it.
But even last year, we got a lot of rain, and it was dry. My pit, in fact, it was so dry from the last time, there was cobwebs and everything in there. And now, so all of a sudden now,
Well, again, if your house is 6 inches above that normal high ground elevation, and it's a foot higher, now you're running all the time, and another year won't run at all.
but this has been going on since the end of March. I mean, how much longer is it gonna go, and how much longer do we have to deal with this? I mean, I call and they come out and they listen to make sure that my line's not broke. No, it's not broke. I said, well, there's something going on. They send somebody out again. And then when I called Water and Light the 3rd time and said, what's going on? And they basically said they weren't gonna come out because they've been out there twice already.
Excuse me, but is there anybody on 16th Street or beyond that are having any water problems?
Well, I mean, I've heard from people that are, all over town just running sump pumps, but I can't say specifically the 16th Street.
Are there other areas in the city that they control the groundwater, that you control the groundwater, suck it away?
We've got there's some locations we've got perforated storm sewers installed.
Some locations it's sporadic.
Yeah.
Are those because of problems like it was?
Are they plugging up?
They were
No.
known high groundwater areas when the storm sewer was initially installed.
Is this a high ground water area where we are?
Not
Would
that
you
we're
consider
aware of.
this? Okay.
No, I mean that, like everybody is aware, those ponds have been dry. I've never seen water in them until now.
And again, my observations, I've, been stopping out in the neighborhood, received calls from a few of you guys, and there's whether it's a sump pump or a well that someone's running because they don't have a sump pump, there's a lot of water being pumped into that pond. And, I think, part of the reason why there's water in the pond is just that it's been continually fed. Last I was out there, it's still, it looks like a lot of water in it, but if you look at the shape of the pond and look at the volume calculations, it's probably only a third, 25 to 33% of its capacity is used right now. There's still a lot of capacity in that pond, before it gets to...
We'll all be flooded out then.
Yeah. Because how many thousands of gallons have I put in there every day? I mean, constantly.
So, Joe, you said that you haven't studied the area, but is that an option that we have like tonight, that we can get a study or get some answers of what things are happening, or what are our options, I guess?
Well, I guess we could.
You won't sell any more of those lots if
it won't be.
The water keeps pumping
Here,
like that.
the situation is, it won't be in the near future. The engineering department right now to perform anything is about 2 months out, because they are totally swamped on our construction projects and things like that. It's not typically something that the city has studied. Usually those types of things are things that are dealt with when the subdivision is initially developed. It's just, if it's a known circumstance, you design your storm sewer with some perforated pipes so that some of the water can be taken that way. This one would be really, really challenging, just to try to figure out where do you go with it. It's not a location where you can easily send the water somewhere. You're going to have to pump it. And again, if you're talking groundwater, high capacity wells that run thousands of gallons a minute don't have a huge cone of depression. So what type of system might be required, to do that? Probably be cheaper to continue to run sump pumps. But again, this is just, I haven't studied it, so just take these comments with a grain of salt.
But this is our meeting to discuss this, so what we're saying is what can be done so that it doesn't continue to happen. I guess what we're looking for is some answers, not just, well, we're just going to watch this. I mean, I guess that's not an acceptable answer.
Well, for the city to study groundwater elevations, probably, you're talking test wells. It would be, it would take us time even to figure out what to do.
And I think we all understand that, but what we're asking is that something could happen. Something that you guys are actually taking it seriously and looking into it. Because, we're all here saying, listen, we've had this property, many of us have had the property for a long time. We've never seen this happen. What is happening right now that is causing this problem?
It's a high groundwater situation all over right now. One of the reasons why the river was so high this spring and the flooding that occurred on the Wisconsin River, the people that forecasted the river flows normally hit it really right on the mark. And they underestimated by a lot. And that's because normally the ground can take some more water. And it does. As it rains, as snow melts, it can get into the ground. It couldn't, right? The ground is generally much more saturated this year than it has been because of the enormous amount of snow and rain that we got, really from February on. And so that's what's different right now. If we had a typical spring.
We had that last year. We had the exact same thing last year. The exact same.
So you had water in the pond last year?
No, we did not. And we did not run our sump pumps like this.
Yeah, and we didn't have the snow that we had.
We had 20 inches in April.
April, we sure did. Yes, we did. We had a serious
You had
snowstorm.
20 inches in April.
Yes, we
had
did.
the fourth highest winter on record in February and March.
Of last year?
This year.
Oh, but last year we also had a
Yes, you had-
significant
you had
snowfall.
20 inches
Just
of
at the
rain,
end.
Or 20 inches of snow, one snow event.
Right, we didn't have really anything from, I mean,
But if the groundwater table is so high on that street, then how come there's only one house that's got pumping water?
if you shot the elevations of the floors, that would be interesting. You know,
How deep is your floor?
well, from what? What's your, you've got to base it off of what real elevation.
It's just the way the road is, but it'd be nice just to get the water problem solved, because putting that water in there does not help the groundwater. And plus, we had a break next to us. How long did that water line break all winter? You know, we don't know how long it was. I mean, I never ever had that problem, ever. And I've been there. And I've been in the long when we had that with those guys. I never had to pump or vacuum water out of my basement.
I guess from a municipal service standpoint, this is not a service that we generally perform, right? I mean, our job is to make sure that we're managing stormwater. You know, the sanitary sewers are working, the streets are good. This is certainly out of our wheelhouse to study something like this. It's not something that I've certainly ever done. I don't know, Joe, if you have any experience with it or not. So, I mean, it's an interesting ask. Because again, it's a groundwater elevation that we generally don't have a lot of control over. Now, if we had a sewer system that was obstructed, and it was causing some of the problems, that's a whole different story. Then the city's got a real responsibility to solve something and solve it now. But you know, this is.
Could we look at the city putting the snow where they are putting the snow? Does that affect that water table at all?
If you look at the number of gallons of water that was in that snow pile versus the amount of gallons in your neighborhood to bring the water table up an inch, no, that pile of snow didn't do anything.
And once again, the snow by the hockey rink only correlates with the amount of snow that we get. The snow by the hockey rink only comes off of Bay Street. That's the only time that we ever pile any snow there, is when we pull snow off of Bay Street. Which, once again, because of the amount of snow that we had last year, we pulled it off. Otherwise, in probably 5 years, it's probably been 2, maybe 3 times that we pulled snow off of Bay Street. So that's why it gets piled there.
I guess what I'm asking is, could you choose a different location when you know that we're having these issues right now, even for next spring? I mean, is that possible? I mean, you're talking, okay, we can't do this because that's going to cost us so much money, right? Well,
I don't even. No, the
other
problem is I don't know what the problem is right now. You have high groundwater.
Right.
We have high groundwater in a lot of places. So what's the problem? Yeah.
But wouldn't that be adding to the problem? When you have I mean, I talked to the vet that lives on Grove. I talked to the people that have purchased the property. They're pumping, and their sump pumps are going. They never have. And they're saying, you know, why are you adding more water to that area right there when, hey, we're having a problem? And why would you do it again next spring when we're asking you, can you just that's a pretty simple solution. That's one solution that it wouldn't be costly. I mean, that you could just put the snow someplace else for next spring, so until we can figure out what's maybe going on. If it is simply this spring that we just have all this, you know, that the water table is high, I understand that. But I mean, it feels like you guys are just like, well, I don't know, you know, too bad. You can't sell your house, and you can't sell your house, and you can't build your house. And, well, you know, that's how what you guys are saying is like there's not an option at all. There has to be some sort of solution. There has to be an option. Is it simply that the water table is just so high? You know, is that why this is happening? Or is there something you could look at as far as a solution?
Right, and I guess the concern I have is at what point is it local government's job to do that?
Well, you are the one dumping the snow, correct? The city is dumping the snow.
We could calculate. How about this? Because I want to kind of read it, and I don't want to cut anybody off. But is that a possibility that we could do, looking for an alternative location to dump snow, just as a case study, unless it completely cost prohibitive. And one of the problems is that we are running out of places to dump.
Yeah, we used to dump at the airport, but we can't do that anymore.
You can't dump in the river. You can't. That is a challenge. But that's a lot less expensive challenge than it would be putting in storm sewer and looping the water, and if those two ideas don't remedy the situation. So is that a possibility that we could try and find another location by next winter to dump snow?
Sure, but I mean, you have to have a large parcel of land that is relatively undeveloped around it. Granted, the Stoiber property is about 500 feet from Grove, correct? Back to about your house. And now there is somebody that lives in the house on Grove, because obviously we do it in the middle of the night. So we try not to slam tailgates and everything like that. And you try to find something that's centrally located, to 8th Street. We used to dump at the airport. We can no longer dump at the airport. There's really no other properties south of, or, in that area that is not developed. You have football fields around the high school, but obviously in those areas, there's sand, there's concrete, there's garbage, that we go and clean up in the spring of the year. So to have that on top of athletic fields or whatever probably isn't very realistic or whatever. But yeah, we can look for other spots or whatever. But one thing I was going to say is Water and Light probably has information readily available, Todd, for when they go and do the well checks on 2 Mile. But the only thing is that on the wrong side of the aquifer with the 2 Mile creek, whether or not to level that or not.
I guess what I was going to add, so I'm, director of electrical, not water, but I've been taking notes down when it comes to the drinking water. I will go back to the water superintendent and the water engineer tomorrow so that I can talk about this with them, because being on the electrical side, I didn't even realize there was an issue in this area. So I'll start some discussions there. As it comes to the discussion with the wells, I can tell you that, so every month we go and we take a water level of our 5 wells, and we are at record levels this year. And those records go back almost 50, 60 years. So that could be, like Joe's been saying, we are in a year where the water table is higher than it's been in a long, long time. So that could be a lot of the issues that you're having with your, water in your basements.
But I don't think it's inappropriate for them to be asking why we're using the dump valve. That's obviously contributing to the high water in that area.
Sure. I'm sure, when this was discussed, what was looked at is what's the most cost-effective way to try to clean that water out of that dead end in order for their drinking water not to have that. And this is what the option was. But now maybe we're creating another problem by doing that. So again, like I said, I took a lot of notes. I'll start talking about it tomorrow.
I talked to Jim about this. Okay. Before I even knew this was an issue, I had heard about the water issues, and then water superintendent is Dale.
And Adam's the engineer.
Adam. I must talk to Adam. So he was kind of explaining it to me for a different project, but I did kind of know about this situation back there. And he did explain there is a lot of information that the Waterworks has about why they went this way or whatever, but there might have to be a policy when we see us above a certain level, we have to not dump. I mean, we can't continue to throw thousands of gallons into the ground, on a high level situation. But maybe that's a policy thing to help out, but I know they do have some information, so we'll have to, do we have to get Dale in here?
Well, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have this on as an agenda item again, and then have Dale and Adam attend so that they can talk about it. Then you got the right people in the meeting talking about, that's the drinking water, not the high water table.
Yep.
So.
I was just going to ask, Paul, how many years have you been dumping snow behind Occuray?
We have dumped snow there for the whole 13 years that I've been here.
Okay.
But that being said, the only time that we use that site is when we pull snow from 8th Street. That's the only time that we use that site to dump.
If we don't have a lot of snow and we don't pull snow off of 8th Street, nothing gets dumped there.
And for time constraints, to be fair to everybody, how about this? This is not going to be the last time that we're going to talk about this. This is the first time that we're talking about this, and this is the first time I knew that there was a concern in one part of town. Interestingly enough, I do own some property that is behind my mom's house where we grew up as kids, and I'm 39 years old now, but I remember when we were kids, there was what we called the swamp in the land, because there was frogs and crickets and everything else that were growing up in the swamp. Well, interestingly, about the last 20 years, there really wasn't any water in this property, and it is kind of a little bit lower area, and I had just thought about that a couple of years ago about, where's the swamp. Interestingly enough, I helped my mom mow the lawn over the weekend, and there is standing water where that swamp used to be. So, and this is on the west side. This is off of 2nd Avenue, kind of by Lion Park. There's a little subdivision in there, and so there is noticeable. I noticed that we have got higher water, and it isn't soaking down. So I don't know. It might be a question that we don't know, and the difference is like what Mr. Terry talked about is elevation. Maybe that groundwater elevation was 1 foot below what everybody's basement is, and now it's coming up. And not that I'm going to step on a soapbox and talk about climate change, but it is a case where 2 degrees could make a difference, or 2 feet could make a difference, and I'll cite freezing. The difference between 33 degrees and the difference between 31 degrees is very, very noticeable. And it's just that 2 degrees. So 2 feet with the water saturation levels with the groundwater could make a difference, and I don't know. But that being said, we won't, as far as I'm concerned, being the chairperson, I won't try and block anything. The one thing is that can we immediately start doing capital improvement projects? We don't have it budgeted. Could we find funds? Sure, there's other potential options, different things that we can look at. But the one thing that I will really like to entertain is if we can look at another place to dump snow, if that's reasonable for tonight, for everybody. And I will continue to have this as an agenda item. It might not be on next committee's agenda. It might be in 2 months, because we do want to gain information, and we want to see what happens. I definitely am very conscious about your concerns, and if I had a magic wand, I would love to remedy everybody's situation. But I don't.
Just one last little perspective, just a 100-acre watershed. Not sure how big the watershed is for your area. 100-acre watershed, 1 inch of rain is 1 million gallons. That's a lot of water, 1 inch of rain. So it is kind of mind-boggling when you think about a rain event where we get 5 or 6 extra inches of rain in a month over the entire area. How many gallons of water that really is? It's a lot of water. So
and with that said, again, I take note of everybody's concern. I appreciate everybody coming down, and we will continue to talk about that. Does that sound fair?
Can I ask how we would be notified when that's going to be on your agenda? How do we find out? Because this literally was word of mouth today. And I don't know that that's so, because the individuals that I spoke with, I specifically said, please let me know when this is going to be discussed. And I didn't hear.
Mr. Chairman, I think at one point, if you want to go to the city clerk's office, you can sign up for an email notification of when every public meeting is held.
And what's on the agenda?
You can get a copy of the agenda and everything.
Okay.
And Jennifer, that was my bad, because when I was looking through the agendas, I missed that item. Otherwise, I called Brian and I called both of you today as soon as I realized it, after you had called me. But yeah, so I missed that on the agenda. Otherwise, I would have notified you.
Yeah, I think I had talked to you too.
But I will tell you, it's the hardest thing in the world to do is communicate effectively throughout a municipality. So if you have any suggestions,
Everybody had my number, so.
No, I'm just saying in general, I mean, to get information out, we always hear that from residents, is we don't ever hear.
Okay.
But the hardest thing for us to do, I mean, and I can only speak for the clerk's office and Mr. Terry's department and Mr. Valor, it's the hardest thing in the world to do is to make sure everybody's duly informed. And they try different things, but it's never always right.
There's no silver bullet for that, and the local government experience that I've had in the past with different communities is that's the biggest struggle, because you look at one extreme would be just complying with state statute, which means posting the agenda in 3 different locations and having it published and maybe on a website. And we do have a comprehensive website. And I think we try and keep the agenda meetings on the same regular dates, and the city council meetings are always the third Tuesday of the month. So that's one extreme, is being complying with state law. Then the other extreme is literally mailing out a copy to every single household. And how much does that cost for postage? How much? And it's something that a local government could do. That is a possibility, but at what cost? And how many people benefit from that with all the agendas? Whereas one household might not even benefit in a whole year of receiving those. So yeah, like Mr. Graff alluded to, is that we would love to have a great suggestion because we want to reach out to everybody. But sometimes, especially with cost concerns, property taxes going up, and where to best utilize taxpayer funds, is that a luxury, or is it something that we need to be doing, an essential? And I don't know.
And like I say, that was my failure on my part, but to your point is, that's our responsibility as elected people to notify those people whether there's an agenda item that pertains to that neighborhood. I really believe that, and that's was my shortcoming today. But that communication in general, when there's a specific agenda item, that's our responsibility to notify them, in my opinion.
With that said, we'll go on to the next item. But I don't know if everybody's happy, but if there is a satisfaction that we're going to continue talking about this isn't going to be a dead end, and we're going to look at possibilities moving forward. But again, with capital improvement projects, there is a mindfulness of that, we have to budget it. And if that is the case where it has been suggested in the past that looping the water, at that time the question is, why wouldn't it get onto an agenda? But again, like I said, we're not going to end discussion just because we're ending discussion tonight on this. But it might not be a very fast turnaround on that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe you should start by not pumping that water into that pond anymore for at least a month.
Well, and that's, I think,
see what happens when it gets
off right now, isn't it?
It's off, yeah.
Is it off now?
It's been off and turn it off, I hope.
But I've been
off for probably about 2 months.
But how much water am I putting in there in a 24-hour period for the last 2 months?
A lot of water.
A lot. My pump it's supposed to put out 1,400 gallons an hour. So 24 hours for 2 months. It's a lot of water.
And I think that's what the utility mentioned, is that they would find out if because at the time when the pump was put in, that was probably the most cost savings way to do it, the cheapest way of doing it.
Right.
But if it is causing a problem, then maybe we might have to look at something where we would actually pump it a further distance or something else. And that it may take more than a month.
Yeah. Like I said, I took a lot of notes down. I'll go back to the water superintendent, the water engineer tomorrow. We'll discuss it. It would be good in a month or 2 months if it comes back on the agenda, at least. Then you have the right people here to discuss it.
I just think every gallon that we can avoid putting additionally into the ground on top of everything else going on would be better, whether it be, connecting the stormwater system, not having that blow off, not putting snow there, the accumulation of those things, maybe that might have an effect, or at least we're not adding to the problem of groundwater.
Any other discussion from committee members? With that, we will, I think it says review and consider, so this is an action item. With no motion or second on the floor, item potentially fails. But again, like I said, it's going to be something that we will revisit. I promise you that. I can't promise you that a remedy will be in place to, if this continues to happen, but we will continue to work on this then. So with that said, we will move to item number 6, review and consider designation of a 4-way stop at the intersections of, and there's going to be 3 of them listed on the agenda, 2 Mile Avenue and 16th Street, Chase Street and 25th Avenue, and Chase Street and 21st Avenue. And thank you for coming down.
Yep, no problem.
And this is a referral by Alderperson Lee Gravel.
So the issue is I get all kinds of phone calls on 25th Avenue. I've contacted over the course of months, last summer, I've contacted dispatch, we put the trailer out, we've had more police in the area. I've stopped local police from driving down my, across my road, and I know there's a lot more presence in the area, but it's not stopping the overall speed. Now, I do know that we've had this issue in the past, and council brought it up 3 years ago.
Yeah, two years ago.
2016.
And they determined that originally they were going to paint some signs on the road, which you and I both know isn't going to do anything, and it would have been a waste of money. The second option, so I asked Erman, I was talking to the chief of police about this, so I asked the question because I said, being a maintenance guy, we always look at different ways. If you can't ask people politely to slow down and stop going 60 miles an hour down a residential street, because I have the same issues on 21st Avenue where I live. If we can't get them to slow down, then we'll get them to stop with a stop sign. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, you either, like I said, we thought about the signs, we've done the trailer, we've done that. Do we put up permanent? There's certain, like around school zones, because that's 25th is also around a school zone. So do we put up all the time, speedometer, the ones that stay on poles but are permanent? You see them all the time in school zones, other communities do it. It just warns them, slow down, you're going over 25 too fast or whatever. Do we do something along that lines? Is that a little cheaper expense, or is it cheaper to put a 4-way stop in? There's already stop signs going the other way. Do we just literally paint lines on the road and put signs up and say, now you're stopping? I do know the hazards of it.
Well, and we can't, right? I mean, unless you change the city ordinance. Our city ordinance requires us to follow the national standards, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. There has to be warrants to put up a stop sign. The purpose of a road is to move traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with 25th, I don't think we've looked at 21st. The problem with 25th Avenue,
It's built wider.
it was built as a arterial. It's an 80-foot wide right-of-way. It's a wide street. It was designed and built as a 35-mile-an-hour street. And politically, it was decided to post it at 25. It was never recommended to post at 25. It's a 35-mile-an-hour street. The traffic studies that have been done demonstrate that the 85th percentile is in that 35-mile-an-hour speed. To expect anyone to drive slower than that is unreasonable. And I think, I've talked to a number of officers myself. I think they are challenged a lot of times to actually pull someone over because they know it's unreasonable. I followed school buses down 25th Avenue that are driving 35 miles an hour, with kids in them. I think the only way to reasonably slow traffic down there, if that's the desire to do so, is to tear up the road, make it into a residential street.
And you and I both know that's not reasonable.
But that's the only way you're going to slow traffic down. It's like when the gas rations went on and they tried to enforce 55-mile-an-hour speed limits on the highways. They couldn't do it. It's unreasonable.
Can you send that?
Now we're faster than what they were before.
Yeah.
70, 75, and that.
Exactly. Can you send the committee members and maybe even the council members, that doesn't have to be tomorrow, that matrix that you just explained to us? Because that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
And that's very interesting to be able to relay to residents.
To the public. Those warrants. So in our ordinance, I think our policy has a lot of those definitions in there as far as the amount of traffic, the differential, that helps set those standards for when is it appropriate to stop traffic. And then, of course, the MUTCD manual is free online as a PDF. So most of those warrants you can, the layperson can look up if they so choose. But absolutely, what we can do is we can pull out those old those studies. I think 2 of them we looked at not too long ago, so we should easily be able to pull that data, get that to you, and and some of the basic information on selecting control devices. There's also there's a great, so for a number of years the DOT used to put out a newsletter called Crossroads, and I've got to find that article because they dedicated almost an entire newsletter to that issue, and it highlights a lot of interesting things. For example, on a street where you really shouldn't be stopping, it doesn't have the warrants for it, you still put stop signs in, people actually speed up. They're making up for lost time, and the studies demonstrate that. They're frustrated because they shouldn't have to stop. The other thing it does is and you get sometimes the same reaction with inappropriate speed limit signs. People ignore it, or they pull up to the stop sign, and every time they look, there's never anybody there. So the one time they get up there and there is someone there, they look and there's nobody there, and they pull out and they have a collision. So it's just real important that and that's why I think the ordinance was put into place, so that we follow those standards, because they're really important. But yeah, we'll put those. So we'll grab those reports and get them to you.
We'll take a look at that, because that would obviously take a look at 21st Avenue as well on Chase. And the other one, the 2 Mile Avenue and 16th, was actually Blevins brought that to my attention and said that they're having a lot of incidences over there.
So I think we've had two accidents this year.
2 accidents this year. Yeah.
One of those might be contributed to a sign.
Both of them are road weather-related conditions. So typically, when we look at so the number of accidents and the type of accidents are one of the criteria, one of the warrants for reviewing stop sign control. And but we're looking for specific accidents that would, the likelihood of them happening or going away with stop signs would be improved if the stop signs were out there. And so, like the right angle collisions, that's a big one. An accident due to road conditions because it's icy and slippery, not an accident that we could count as a tribute to this sort of thing. So we've started looking at that. 16th Street's come up a number of times. We've done a couple speed counts, traffic counts on there in the last, I think it was 2018 when we did the counts. So it's been on our radar. There's been a preliminary review of the accidents at 2 Mile already ahead of Chief Blevins' request, and he did make a specific request to the engineering department back in April. Okay. So it's on our list.
On top of that, there's some question, at least initially, which is part of what we've got to study, is the traffic count and volumes. Are we stopping the right traffic? Are we, the stop signs on 16th.
Are they the right way or the wrong way?
Right. So those are all things that'll be looked at in the review. And that one is on the list, so we'll have an answer for that one.
No, that's fine. But go ahead.
I'd just like to say to Lee, welcome to the club of aldermen that have traffic issues in your neighborhood. You can literally sit out on my front step and watch people blow the stop sign on Apricot to 11th Street. I mean, honestly, in my own opinion, from what I see, is a lot of people in this town are just jackwagon when it comes to driving. They're inattentive drivers, and I think the only way to really remedy, I swear to the good Lord, you could put a flashing red light on that stop sign on Apricot and light it up and make it the brightest shade of red you can make it, and people will still blow that stop sign. Last summer, probably didn't exercise the best judgment. I was heading northbound on 11th Street. Lady come up the hill in a minivan on Apricot, blew the stop sign, almost T-boned me. Laid on the brakes, laid on the horn, had the window down, yelled at her. Stop signs aren't for suggested purposes. She just hung her head for a moment, picked back up, drove on. my own opinion, I think the only way you're gonna get the traffic under control is the police department's just gonna have to stop giving warnings and start issuing citations. That's really what it comes down to, and I know the cops are busy, they have a lot on their plate, and they have their own staffing issues to deal with, but I think as they have time, if they start catching these people that think that the stop signs with white rings around them are optional, start giving them a citation, no more warnings, right to a citation. If they're driving faster than they should be driving at a posted speed limit, cite them. Because that's the only way you're gonna start getting drivers in compliance. If the word gets, like you hear when you go out of town, like, oh, the police in this town are really aggressive. If you're on the outskirts of this town and you see the reduced speed ahead sign, by the time you get to this sign, you better be doing the speed limit or they're gonna get you. Everybody hears of a town like that. When you get to that town, that's the first thing that goes through your head. I better slow down here. So if we do the same thing in our town and just word gets out, like, hey, Rapids cops are really aggressive. If you're screwing off when you're driving, you're gonna get a ticket. I'm not gonna say it's gonna eliminate 100% of the problem, but it'll make a big dent in it.
What is it, Rosendale off of 151 going north at 26 to Fond du Lac? That they sell T-shirts that I got pulled over at the local gas station. So it's that's the #1 speed trap, I guess, ranked in the state type of thing. But there is validity to what you just mentioned, Mr. Cole. Thank you. So as far as that goes, with the advent of the fact that we really can't do anything about putting a four-way on any of these particular streets.
No, but I would like to see the information. We can move this back to, and maybe just put investigation of Chase and 25th Avenue, or investigation of 25th Avenue, investigation of 21st Avenue, just to...
As a placeholder on
just
so
so
we can get you the information.
Make sure we get the information and make sure that we can maybe vet this out if you guys have other ideas that we could do, or, something, because this is... it's a continual call, and it's kind of one of those things that...
Yeah, well, I guess when this was there, my question was going to be because of what we've done with 25th over and over, I mean, with that, and as you said, the road's built it's a speedway, it's a super speedway, it's wider than Golden Sands that they race on, I mean, and this is straight, here they go around,
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like that, it's big, so I mean, the speed limit was not put on for what it should have been. Along with that, at the same point in time when it was done, there should have been sidewalks put in, and they were not. It should have been mandated to be put in. So when I saw this, I was going to ask what the warrants are next, because it has to meet. It has to meet something to be able to do something.
Yep.
We can't just basically say I want a stop sign or that somebody, I want a stop sign in my corner because...
Right, but the idea was to get it on the agenda to discuss.
Oh, yeah. No.
With the intent that is this an option?
I'm not disagreeing that it should have been on there. Just,
and I think to add...
There's things that it has to meet to be able to do something, and that's,
And I think to add to that, Mr. Terry mentioned that the speed limit may have been changed for political reasons, and unfortunately that's something that every community deals with previous councils making decisions or making development.
But even so, I mean, we had a full house. Every resident on 25th Avenue we had the meeting in the council chambers. I mean, it was a packed house, and they did not want to see the speed limit change. So the challenge is that there's something that they want to see that isn't practical to happen. And so you can resolve the speeding issue by correcting the speed limit. And then if people are traveling inappropriately, I think at that time then an officer is much more likely to get them. But it's a no-win situation. If you raised it, everyone would have been upset, and they're still upset because that's what they're driving anyway. So it's
typically not the people that live there, though. And I think that's the challenge, is because the people that live there and use that street, because I live right there, so it's people walking their dog. The width is actually appropriate for that street.
For 21st?
For 25th.
Yeah. For 25th, okay.
Because of the amount of people that walk it, that ride their bikes on it, it's used a lot. And it's in a school area. but it's not treated that way. And with the school district putting more kids over there now and the redesign, maybe we need to look at.
I mean, there really should be sidewalks on there. It's an
should-
arterial.
I agree. It
Our
should
ordinance
have been-
requires it. But again, that, you know, those are things that I think over the last several years, some of the action that the council's taken, you know, our assessment procedures, things like that, it becomes less of a design by committee type activity and becomes more of a, let's do it right.
Design by standard.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the committee or anybody else have anything more for item number 6? With that said, we will move on to item number 7, review snow and ice policy control. The reason why I have this on the agenda is because Mr. Graff was not here, and for whatever reason, I have got 4 copies of the snow and ice agenda that I put in from last meeting, so I wanted to make sure that Mr. Graff had 4 copies. Yeah, I'll give you all 4 copies.
Thanks.
And so if you had anything, any questions, concerns, and I think that this is something, especially in terms of the snowfall that we've had, the different snowfall accumulations at different times. This is something that I do believe that the Public Works Department internally just deals with. And I think that there are, you know, some anomalies that occur, and unfortunately weather patterns are changing. But I think that this is something that we can continuously review. I won't have it on the agenda unless we have a specific thing that we want to change moving forward. Yeah. But as far as if there is any suggestions or if there is any need to address changing weather patterns or anything else, then, you know, we can definitely look at that. Mr. Cole.
Hey, thank you, Alderperson Kushak. I know I'd also ask you about snow and ice policy. I believe I sent Joe an email from my business owner in my district I received. And I have the email here. This was sent back on March, back when we were in the bulk of getting our heavy snow. And this person writes, my concern for the neglect of the city not keeping the sewer drain open, causing flooding to the entrance of our business. When thawing starts, there's 3 to 4 inches of water over the ice that you can't see. Also, if I requested that to have Apple Street plowed, I was informed by Joe Terry that side streets do not have to be plowed if less than 4 inches. Apple Street is the only place our customers and employees have to park to enter our building. And this was around the same time we got the rain, snow, then rain, I believe. So it froze and it left a layer of ice along the curbs so no water can drain. So as a business owner, they were mad that they had to chisel the ice away from the sidewalk. They felt that since that was in the curb, that should have been the city's responsibility to remove that ice buildup. And they talked that the water actually did make it up close to their building. And then because of the nature of the snow, I mean, you know, when we get snow, we've all seen the different degrees of snow in Wisconsin. You have the white, powdery, fluffy stuff that you can take the leaf blower and move, and then you have the wet, slushy snow that sucks to drive in, and if you have a shovel and you're stuck shoveling it, it's not unpleasant to move. I was wondering, I know the city's policy, I believe, is 4 inches about snow removal.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in that particular situation, I think we did verify that, you know, that block of apple always gets plowed around the corner. I think at 8th and Apple.
No. If we're plowing during the day, we can't plow Apple Street because all of his employees and his customers and everything park on Apple Street. I think in this case, Steve, that he has a drain in his back property that is very shallow, that freezes. So that was part of the reason why he had water almost coming to his property, because the drain itself was frozen. And at that time, we have a steamer that goes around and cleans catch basins, and it was built in, I think, 72 or something like that. And it had a check valve that was burnt out or broke on it, so we weren't running it that day. But he called me and we did clean out. That was part of the reasons why we didn't plow that snow event, because it was less than 4 inches, and they were calling for, I believe it was 3 inches of rain on that Wednesday, and the temperature was going to stay above freezing, and they were predicting all that rain. So we then had, I think, probably 8 or 9 units out digging out the catch basin, so that when it did rain, the water did have some place to go.
I think that particular business too, their building is actually right at the back of the walk. And I think I got a call from them sometime that morning expressing concern about the water ponding there. And I think it was within an hour or two, we had that taken care of. But there were thousands of catch basins that we were cleaning on that day, and we had gone out the prior day or 2 days prior to that in anticipation, cleaning out the areas where we knew there would be problems. The rest of it, a lot of times you don't know if there's going to be a problem until there's a problem. So,
And Joe and Paul, I understand this here with a winter from heck, and I appreciate everything that Public Works and Street Department crews have done to keep the roads open. I know it was a challenging task this year. Maybe this next year won't be as bad, but since we're just kind of in discussion mode, so we don't have some of the same problems twice, I don't know if it's appropriate for this committee or if it'd have to go to legislative committee, but in the future, we have municipal court in our city, and we levy fines against people, and some people have the inability to pay their fines. Well, when you have storm sewers that are covered by snow and ice, what better way to open them up than maybe take some people that owe some money to the city and put them in a community service capacity and say, you have 25 hours of community service after your next major snow event, why don't you go chisel out some storm grates and open those up so when it thaws, water has a place to go. Or, shovel some of our public areas out because the plows can get up and get to the places, but
generally when in those situations where we've got the catch basins, it requires a piece of heavy equipment to scratch and search for it. So it's
but that is an issue. I mean, as far as what's the fire department's role? I thought they had a role, and that was the hydrants. Is it the fire department that's supposed to keep the hydrants open, or
No.
Waterworks that's
Property
supposed
owner.
to keep?
property owner.
It's all property owner?
property owners.
Yeah, most municipalities will kind of have a promote and adopt a hydrant, where and maybe if it's an elderly person that lives next to the hydrant, the neighbor will come over and get it plowed out, and it's to the the block around that hydrant. It's to their best interest to keep that thing clear.
I was going to, I mean, to Mr. Croth, I think that, there is a potential that, much like, I guess, weighing that balance in terms of providing services. I mean, there is an option that we could provide more services, but then there's that element with cost. And I want to say that there's a community on the North Shore of Milwaukee, I think it's Village Whitefish Bay, or maybe all of the North Shore communities that have a lot of money. They've got garbage collection where the municipal workers go into the backyard of the, or gated area of the houses, take the can out, dump it into a little gator type of a deal, because they don't want garbage cans sitting out in front while people are driving up and down. And that's got to be a tremendous expense, a lot more than a truck, taking the garbage. So there are, I mean, we could clean snow when it's 2 inches, when it's 1 inch, or remove snow from everywhere, and that is something that the committee and the council we could do, but it's balancing that option. And one of the things that I do at my house, and I've done it the last 2 years, is there's a storm drain quite a bit down from my driveway, but it's right at the edge of my property line, and I take my snow blower and I actually run that every time the snowplow goes by. And prior to that, over the last 10 years when I didn't do that, I would have a big lake in front of my driveway, because there was snow and ice that were packed on a curb, so it couldn't go down to a storm drain. But by taking care of that every snowfall, and I understand that this property, that you can't snow blow, I'm blowing it all into my yard so that it's a nice clean curb to where the catch basin, and this property you can't. The building is literally right on the sidewalk, you know, so you just can't snow blow it away. But sometimes property owners do kind of gotta maybe go above and beyond the simple expectations, you know.
Do you guys have any concerns or anything you want to see in the snow and ice policy that you'd like to change? I mean, I always think after a major event, that's the time to talk about it. Unfortunately, it never happens before, right? Because if you don't have to worry about it, we don't have an event, nobody really thinks about it. But I mean, part of the issue is I wanted to make sure that we got what we feel is appropriate with the new way of doing routes, or, you know.
Yeah, so obviously that was, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Obviously, the last time that was looked at was that date on there, I believe it's 2014.
14, yep.
You know, so there are some changes to it because in that policy, it reads that we, you know, the different type of equipment that we have, you know, it says, I believe, five graders and 4 end loaders. So now we're 6 graders or 6 loaders and 3 end loaders and 2 trucks, and then we also run 4 sander trucks instead of the 3 that I believe that are in there. You know, so there are changes to it that have to be done, and actually probably December it was started to make those changes, and then it just didn't happen. So.
Do we need to have those specific things in a policy? I could almost believe that might have been a union thing way back when, in terms of identifying the specific 5-yarder or the tandem axle drivers or whatever.
I don't know that it was. I think it was maybe just a communication as to what the city, how many units the city puts out and how it does things, you know, because in there it speaks about how the main priority is the highways. Once the highways are completed, then it's the arterial streets, you know, and so in saying that, it just says these are the pieces of equipment that we use to maintain these and to show specific routes, you know, because, you know, even between us 3 managers in here, we have a difference in opinion as far as what an arterial street, you know, is sometimes and stuff like that. And so I believe in the policy it specifically identifies, it does it in the maps. It shows in the different areas what we consider arterial streets versus a residential street and stuff like that.
For advocacy, I can't advocacy lady to advocate, yes.
Yeah, but it's virtually every 4 blocks is what an arterial street is, you know, so.
I don't want to prolong this and make a complicated issue, but you had said something about that you have a machine that goes around that needs to find these catch basins and that sort of thing?
No, so like, for example, when we had all of that slushy snow and it froze, and there's a probability then that catch basin is not going to work because it's got that snow that's now ice and snow on it. And so, you know, we've got some, you know, our end loaders, our tractor backhoes, we go out and, you know, we have them mapped for the most part. Most of them are mapped. You know, we'll go out and locate them and get them opened up.
By catch basin, is that the storm sewer?
Yeah, the inlet the drain itself. And, you know, so we're trying to be pretty proactive at that. But when we have an event where there's a bunch of ice, you know, you've got to go in there with a pretty heavy piece of equipment to basically get that scratched off. And in some cases, that's not enough. And we got to get a steamer in there with, you know, high temperature steam to.
But it takes time and an effort to try and locate those and that sort of thing. I guess one suggestion, and take it for what it's worth, but those fiber optic poles, or not fiber optic, the fiberglass poles, going around or maybe making it public notice or whatever to property owners or whatnot to mark those. I mean, thinking outside of the box, maybe people don't think of that. You know, the same logic of adopting a fire hydrant or something, you know, just to kind of help out and that sort of thing. I mean, like us, we'll try to shovel out those just because it benefits us, because we don't want the flooding, but I don't know. Just thought I'd throw that out there, but.
Thanks. think the other thing that we talked about, proposing for the policy is, including in that policy how we handle private mailboxes, for example. So there's a few odds and ends that could use to be updated in there.
Like you said, max speed of your grader was what, 17 miles an hour?
Yeah, I think that's max speed. Normally they're plowing around 11.
What I'm saying is maybe it's worth calling out so residents see. Obviously we had that conversation or whatever, where residents worried about we were going too fast and we're knocking over.
Yeah, and what happens is when the snow is on the sidewalk, we went by too fast.
Yeah.
And when the snow is balled up in the driveways, we were going too slow. It might not actually have to do with the perception of how fast the vehicle's going, it's where did the snow end up? And sometimes you don't have a choice. In order to get it to leave the plow, you have to travel a certain speed, and that speed might be where it's dumping on the sidewalk. And
the primary reason why we're plowing is to opening up streets so that the general public can...
And the policy does spell that out, right? That's a possibility that happens.
And the type of snow could make a difference with that too.
Yeah.
If it's denser snow.
Yeah, for instance, the last snow event, we had a loader and 2 trucks that finished plowing virtually behind Walmart in the Rosewood subdivision. And there was a bunch of slop on A Street, so they went down to Tractor Supply and they came back, and the loader was first doing the median on A Street, and the 2 trucks were behind it. I was probably 12 cars behind them, and there was 15 cars behind me. They were literally going 12 miles an hour. At least I was, and obviously we were maintaining the same speed. The last truck was throwing the snow 12 feet off of the curb line. He was going over the sidewalk. And it wasn't because he was going 25 miles an hour, but that's obviously the perception because where the snow lands, but as Alderperson just said, the high percentage of moisture, you have an object at rest that is now given velocity and it's going to launch, especially when there's mass to it,
So how about this? This is to finalize this item number 7. I won't have it on the agenda. We'll kind of keep it in the referral mode until the Public Works Department staff comes with recommended changes for us to adopt.
Should we shoot for November?
Yeah, the idea is we do it. Now's the time to look at it when you guys get your time or whatever. Obviously there's plenty of stuff to do, but.
And I think, we would want it finalized when we anticipate the new snowfall so that we can have it consistent. So I guess that's what, does any other committee member have any? Mr. Colt, do you have anything as an alderperson? No. With that said, we will leave item 7, go on to item 8, review referral list. And referral list should be on the back. I don't know if there was any additions.
I do have one to add, and we can discuss adding it here, but I do think it would warrant a special meeting, perhaps on Monday. We do have a request for a review of change order on the West Side Lift Station project. We had a time and materials not to exceed change order agreement already, and the contractor's looking for some on top of that. We'd like to get that project closed out, and if you recall, as long as the change order is within the budget, city ordinance and city policy allows this committee to have the authority to make those decisions. In the spirit of trying to keep that project going and get it closed out, is there any chance we could meet on perhaps next Monday? The contractor could meet Monday to review that request.
What time are you thinking?
Whatever time works.
I'm going to be hard pressed. I'm out of town next week on my doctoral residency, but we're not going until Tuesday morning. So I could be available on Monday, but the one thing, because the contractor called me, and I recommended the contractor to check this out, because I thought that we had approved, not the committee, I think the committee, we voted 0-3 on it, that the mayor could approve unilaterally that change order for that wastewater? Well, what was that then?
No. The committee can. The committee has the authority to make that decision. The committee's decision is final.
Thank you.
And that was where it was left, because that policy exists, and we had discussed, I think, at the committee level that should we need to meet, because what I was looking for is a policy to, allow staff or someone to within reason, approve these things so that we don't encounter delays. But I think we had decided that really we could, as a committee, there's no reason why we couldn't meet with 24 hours notice if it was an important decision to make. And so it was left alone. So that existing policy is still in place, where the committee has the authority, as long as the change order is within the project budget amount, this committee has the authority to make those decisions.
I think we had that under the agreement, but when it went to council, it got reversed at council. It was held out by Koth and put through at council that the mayor had the decision on that particular project, the authority over that project.
Yeah, I'm 99 because
I wasn't happy.
I wasn't happy either. And that's my interpretation of what that ordinance is that the mayor has the autonomy to be able to do that and authorize it. And it was saved for that project. It was originally written, drafted, and suggested that it just specifically on this project. It wasn't an overreach of all projects or all future projects. But, not that I need.
I'll double check with Sue on that.
Yeah,
Well,
check it, because I'm pretty sure.
If not, could we tentatively schedule something for Monday? I can let you know.
Monday, I can make Monday work, but because this is not, and when I make this statement, I don't want to circumvent public interest and whatever, but like you said, a 24-hour notice. What about, dare I say, Friday? Potentially even before the end of the day, so that
The contractor can't, he's not available. He could do Monday or Wednesday next week.
Wednesday, I can't do it.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be here. Only 2 members of the council. And in fact, yeah,
You could appoint
anybody. And I could ask someone to sit
too.
But I could Monday.
It would have to be right at 3, and I'd have to be gone by 4.
I don't think that'd be an issue.
I could probably have to be gone by 4:45, but.
And I think what it is how much. What is the dollar value of the change?
It's $57,000 additional dollars over the $66,000.
Fuck, I thought you were talking 5,700. I apologize for my language.
$57,000.
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big number, and it's a time and materials not to exceed already, right? So, again, I'll make sure you guys get the staff recommendation on that. And, we already told the contractor we have a time and materials not to exceed, that it was already approved. You've exceeded it. That's your method, that's your situation, but we'll listen to you, right? So I'd like to schedule that if we can, just to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, with that dollar figure, what I'd like to do is, especially because I thought, in my interpretation of what was approved in terms of having the mayor approve if the committee can't do that, and if this is a timely manner, I almost want to compel the mayor to make the decision on this. Because the council themselves, 5 out of 8 council members, gave the mayor the authority to be able to do this. So,
you know what, let me double check that. If we can schedule tentatively for 3 o'clock, I will check and make sure that actually got passed. And if it did, I'll let you know, and we could, not schedule the meeting. Because I'm on vacation Thursday and Friday, so I'll let you know by the end of the day tomorrow.
Well, how about this? I'll even call the city attorney. I'll call.
Okay.
And just so that we're not playing phone tag, and we're not getting misinterpretations.
So I'll wait to hear from you.
And you'll wait, but we can still tentatively schedule this because we can always cancel it.
Right.
So
we could still have it at 3 o'clock with the mayor on Monday anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, it like you said, with the language that it is, and I could be wrong. I may have misinterpreted, but I don't think that in terms of the spirit of what it was, why it would have even been entertained.
See, I thought it was shot down for that reason.
No, it was
and that was the argument, and then it got passed.
Yeah, we voted it 0-3, and because we voted on it, we didn't let it fail. it went to the council floor, it was held out, and then it was approved by the three. So the
Okay,
mayor
my recollection may not be correct. And if that's the case, then we'll deal with it that way, and, you know, we might be able to get it done even tomorrow or whatever, but.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Nice.
No, that would be,
Okay.
put the ball back in his
Keep
court.
us up to speed.
Yeah.
I'll send you, I did prepare a referral document. I'll make sure that you all have a copy of that.
Wonderful.
Are the rest of these being left on?
Oh, I didn't even, yeah.
On the
the question
referral,
is-
I mean, like the ice and snow, it's gotta be brought back with updates
Yeah, I didn't
or
leave it
whatever,
on.
but we need that left on.
Yeah.
Leave it on?
Yeah, I would say, but the one that was the Coast, was that Coast or Catnaw's?
I was looking at that, the street lighting.
The street lighting, was
That
that?
was Catnaw.
Was that Catnaw, so is that done?
I think we can remove that because the Waterworks and Lighting Commission is not going to change the policy that they had. It was more of an advocacy to have Water and Light kind of talk about it.
Okay.
So I think Mr. Catnaw was satisfied and I can speak with him about that. So we can remove the one all the way on the bottom.
So since Mr. Chairperson, you have the revisit garbage and recycling ordinance in there, is it redundant to have Joe Zerflu's referral in there also?
Correct, we can remove that as well. And I don't anticipate and one of the things that compelled me to put this back on the agenda, including the residential or the mobile home, was the fact that I started getting phone calls from residents saying that the word on the street was that I was the one that started this whole deal. And no, we're going to put it back on the council floor and get it resolved once and for all. So that can be removed.
So that will get brought up at the June, and maybe I'm off base here, so I apologize. That'll get brought up at the June council meeting?
June 18th, I think, right? Is that what it is? Yeah, that will be on the agenda for June.
And if it's not unanimous, it would take 2 readings to change.
So what do we do?
Just stay the course.
Yeah, I think, stay the course and.
Because June 17th, we were going to start to make deliveries of the carts.
Yeah, I mean, because
Well, if anything, it would be an addition to, so I mean, you might as well get the carts rolling. And
Well, the challenge is if
the routes.
all of a sudden the routes were back to the drawing board and.
yeah, I would say a status quo until something changes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because it wouldn't be, in terms of, I guess, program planning or whatever, it wouldn't be advantageous to try and think of alternatives if it doesn't happen. Right. So.
Do you want a copy of the snow and ice policy?
You got 2 of them?
He's got 4 of them.
There's this one too.
Mr. Colton? No. Okay, I'll have.
Why is he got it?
I don't know. And if we're going to revise it, you want one, Tom?
I got one.
Yeah, you got one.
Unless I'm supposed to be that quick, it hasn't that many pages.
So is there anything else, develop a street resurfacing program separate from but complementary to chip seal? We can keep that on there. Review snow and ice policy control, keep that on. Revisit garbage recycling ordinance, that one can get crossed off. The one all the way at the bottom that Mr. Terry mentioned about Alderperson Zerflu, that one can get removed. We'll keep on Alderperson Blazer's request for 21st place. A request from DOT to modify the state municipal financial agreement for project 6999. That particular one, we'll keep that one on there.
There was hazardous material there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the northwest corner. And there was material there in 2005 when the DOT rebuilt it the last time.
Wow.
Which is why we thought there wouldn't be an issue. Because it was removed.
Yeah.
But it's still there. So.
Well, there isn't a possibility that
they only
not all of it got removed.
There is. What? Yeah. So yeah, we'll discuss it at the next meeting when we have it on the agenda.
Good. Yeah, it's been a long night. So, as far as referral list, we just quick went through that. The next item on the agenda is number 9 for adjournment.
I'll move we adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Rayom, second by Mr. Graff. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No, motion carries. We are now adjourned at 9:03 p.m.
15-hour day today, Paul.
906.